The story begins before sunrise on a frozen human colony world called Kestrel 9, where life is always hard and danger is normal. So Mara Hale, a human woman who lives alone at the edge of a frozen valley, is already awake when a violent knock shakes her small house. The sound is heavy and metallic, strong enough to make snow fall from the roof and ice crack across the ground. And Mara instantly knows this is not a storm or a broken machine. When she looks out the window, she sees tall, black-armored figures standing in a perfect circle around her home, their armor glowing with red symbols and steaming in the cold air. And she recognizes them as soldiers of the Dragon Empire, one of the most feared forces in the galaxy. Fear tries to rise in her chest, but she pushes it down, because fear never helped anyone survive on a world like this. Behind her, something large and alive breathes slowly, making the floor tremble, reminding her why the Empire has come. Beneath her house is an old mining shelter she turned into a cellar, and inside it lie two enormous ancient dragons, their bodies massive even while curled, their scales cracked and covered in ice, their wings torn and burned, their eyes old and tired. These are not myths or legends, but star dragons, beings older than most civilizations, once rulers of entire systems before empires learned to hunt them, capture them, and call them property. 2 nights earlier, Mara found them in the valley after a violent plasma storm. Frozen, broken, and close to death, and instead of calling authorities or selling the information for wealth and safety, she made a choice that changed everything. She dragged power cables through the snow, drained her generators, burned through her fuel, and gave the dragons warmth and energy, not because she expected thanks, but because she could not walk away from dying creatures. Now the cost of that choice stands outside her door. A loud alien voice speaks through the cold air, translated clearly into human language, ordering her to surrender the dragons, calling them imperial property, and warning that refusal will mean total extermination. The words are meant to crush her spirit, but they do not. Mara opens the door herself, letting freezing wind rush inside, and steps out to face the soldiers with no weapon in her hands. She tells them calmly that she does not own property and that they are standing on private land. Words that sound small compared to plasma rifles and armored troops, but they are spoken with steady strength. The soldiers raise their weapons without hesitation, because the Empire does not argue with humans, and the moment stretches tight with tension, balanced between silence and violence. Deep under the house, the dragons feel the danger and begin to wake fully, ancient instincts stirring after centuries of pain and loss. One of them remembers fire, flight, and war, and another remembers betrayal and chains, and both feel something strange and unfamiliar pulling them toward this small human who chose to help when no one else would. The soldiers prepare to fire, confident in their power, believing this will be another simple retrieval, another quiet victory for the Empire, but they do not see what is coming. High above the valley, hidden by clouds and distance, old machines that humans abandoned long ago begin to hum as systems wake from sleep, responding to signals and hands that never stopped fixing, building, and preparing. The Empire believes humans are weak, scattered, and unimportant, but this moment proves they never understood them at all. As the air grows heavy with the promise of violence, the ancient dragons remember something they had almost forgotten, something no empire ever fully erased. The memory that humans, when pushed into a corner, do not beg, do not kneel, and do not give up. They endure, they resist, and they strike back in ways no ruler expects. And as dawn breaks over the frozen valley, with weapons raised and lives balanced on a breath, the universe stands at the edge of a mistake it will soon regret. The moment the first Imperial shot should have come, the ground itself erupted as one of the dragons, the smaller, silver blue one uncoiled with incredible speed and strength. smashing through the cellar door with claws that glowed faintly with energy, the scales along its body reacting as ancient systems of defense and power awoke. Mara, though small and human, did not run in fear. Instead, she ran toward the chaos, toward the danger, because humans were not the strongest or fastest species in the galaxy, but they were clever, resourceful, and willing to fight when cornered. The Imperial soldiers opened fire immediately, plasma beams slicing through the thin morning light, yet Mara moved with precise calculation, dodging, weaving, and using the terrain she knew better than any outsider. Behind her, the dragon's presence made the soldiers hesitate for a split second, long enough for Mara to reach a hidden control panel she had discovered in her preparation of the valley, an old interface buried beneath the snow connected to long-forgotten mining equipment, satellite links, and defensive turrets. With a strong punch to the controls, she brought the valley to life. Turrets rose from ice, drones unfolded their gun platforms, and signals were sent to orbiting satellites that humans had salvaged from decades past, activating railguns and automated defense arrays that had lain dormant for years. The Imperial soldiers had come expecting a simple raid, a quick collection of ancient property. But instead they faced a trap engineered by a human who understood her land, the technology at her disposal, and the minds of her enemies. As Mara worked, her voice crackled over improvised communications, calling for reinforcements from other human colonies across the system, warning them of the Dragon Empire's attack. And every signal that went out found a response. Hidden cargo ships altered their trajectories to act as ramming weapons. Old farm stations powered up massive railguns, and human pilots who had been hiding in shadows came forward, ready to fight in ships barely maintained, but driven by courage and experience. The Empire's fleet above was massive, vast, and perfectly coordinated. Trained for centuries in the art of war, yet humans did not operate like other species. They adapted, improvised, and struck unpredictably, turning the very landscape into a weapon. Ships twisted, swerved, collided, and fired in chaotic patterns that confounded Imperial sensors. And as plasma beams and missiles streaked through the sky, the dragons themselves added to the destruction. The larger crimson dragon rose from the valley with a roar that shook the ground and rattled the stars. Its wings catching the cold air, scales glowing with the faint red of remembered fire, energy sparking along its jagged edges. Its presence was awe-inspiring, terrifying, and magnificent. And even the soldiers who had seen the universe's deadliest creatures could not stand against the combination of dragon power and human ingenuity. Mara stood her ground in the valley, bleeding from small wounds from debris and stray plasma, shaking from exertion and fear, yet unbroken, because she knew the dragons were counting on her, and the humans across the system were trusting her to lead. She had no illusions about the cost. Lives would be lost, ships destroyed, and her own safety was already gone. But humans had a way of thriving in hopeless situations, turning odds that should have been fatal into opportunities. The dragons moved with precision, guided by instincts and by a strange bond with Mara, circling enemies, breathing fire and energy, tearing apart armored vehicles, while Mara coordinated ground and orbital forces with signals, improvised commands, and the occasional calculated bluff. Imperial forces tried to regroup, tried to flank, and tried to bring down Mara first, believing that if the human was dead, the dragons would falter, but they underestimated her. She used terrain to her advantage, ice ridges and rocky outcroppings to shield her allies, rerouted drone fire to intercept boarding parties, and coordinated ship collisions to break enemy formations, demonstrating that humans did not need perfection or massive numbers to prevail. They used creativity, determination, and a willingness to risk everything. The fight escalated as the skies above became a twisted ballet of ships, turrets and dragons, energy lighting up the snow and clouds, explosions shaking the ground, and humans screaming, shouting, and laughing in the chaos, because courage often looks like madness to an enemy. Through it all, Mara maintained focus, knowing that retreat would mean annihilation. That compromise with an empire that hunted dragons would be nothing but slavery for the creatures she had saved, and that the survival of both her species and the dragons depended on her strategy, her bravery, and her refusal to yield. The smaller dragon, though still wounded, flew low and struck Imperial units on the ground with precise bursts of energy, while the larger one soared above, raining fire and destroying enemy vehicles, leaving trails of smoke and scorched ice in its path. Mara coordinated every attack with sharp commands, often moving from one control panel to another, guiding human ships through narrow valleys and icy passes, turning old scrap equipment into deadly weapons. Despite overwhelming odds, humanity responded in a way the Empire had never predicted, without cohesion in the normal sense, yet perfectly coordinated through trust, improvisation, and sheer will. Humans became more than soldiers, they became an unstoppable storm. Emotional strain pressed on Mara. She feared the dragons would be harmed. The human forces would fall, and the Empire's retaliation could reach beyond Kestrel 9. Yet she refused to show fear because the dragons needed confidence. The humans needed hope, and showing doubt would be deadly. Throughout the chaos, moments of connection arose, a pilot risking his life to save another, Mara shouting orders to repair crews who barely had time to respond, a dragon instinctively shielding a human from a plasma blast, and each moment reminded Mara that human strength was not in their technology alone, but in their willingness to endure, to act, and to protect. The battle raged for hours, space and land merging into a single theater of war where dragons, humans, and alien soldiers clashed in ways that no historian could have predicted. Yet, despite suffering, damage, and loss, the tide slowly turned. Imperial units faltered under the unpredictable strategies of humans and dragons working in tandem, their formations broken by attacks they could not anticipate, and for the first time, the Empire faced something it could not crush with sheer force. By the end of this furious day, smoke rose over the valley. Ships floated broken or crashed, dragons rested momentarily, and Mara, exhausted, bleeding, and shaken, stood tall because humanity had shown again that while they were not the oldest or strongest species, when pushed beyond limits, their courage, intelligence, and refusal to submit could overcome empires. The stage was set for the final confrontation, where the dragon's full power and the human's relentless spirit would be unleashed together, proving that even against overwhelming odds, humans could endure, fight, and win. The climax of the story unfolds with the Dragon Emperor himself watching from his massive throne ship. Floating in the cold darkness of space, his presence imposing and ancient, confident in the strength and order of his fleet, certain that no human, no matter how clever, could stand against the full might of the Dragon Empire, yet even as he observes, the events on Kestrel 9 begin to defy every expectation he has ever held. Mara Hale, battered, bleeding, and exhausted, stands in the frozen valley with the two ancient dragons at her side, coordinating humans across the system with signals, improvised commands, and sheer willpower, as if the entire galaxy depends on her ability to think, adapt, and inspire at once, which in truth it does. The Imperial fleet, expecting a swift retrieval of their property, finds itself under relentless assault from ships and stations humans have rebuilt, repurposed, and armed with deadly precision. Cargo vessels become ramming missiles, orbital satellites fire long-abandoned railguns, and mining drones unfold into mobile artillery. Each strike calculated to maximize damage while conserving the human forces that are already far outnumbered and outgunned. The two dragons, rejuvenated by Mara's care and their own ancient power, rise fully from the valley, their wings casting enormous shadows, their scales glowing with energy that the Empire can barely comprehend. The larger crimson dragon, a terrifying vision of raw strength and fury. The smaller silver-blue dragon, agile and precise, its movements almost impossible to track. And together they begin to coordinate with Mara's commands in an instinctive, unspoken bond that demonstrates the unique alliance between human courage and dragon power. Imperial ships try to regroup, attempting to bring overwhelming force to bear. But Mara's humans have already adapted. Unpredictable flight paths, surprise attacks from unexpected angles, and a willingness to sacrifice individual ships to protect the greater plan turn the battle into a swirling chaos the Emperor cannot control. And he realizes that strategy alone will not win this fight. Mara herself becomes a symbol of human resilience, moving among the chaos, issuing orders, guiding reinforcements, and even physically intervening when necessary, dodging debris and plasma fire, climbing control stations, and risking life after life to protect both humans and dragons, showing the Empire that courage, ingenuity, and determination can compensate for the lack of size, speed, or advanced weaponry. Emotional tension rises as the battle intensifies, with human pilots screaming through comlinks, dragons roaring above the clouds, and explosions rocking both land and orbit, yet Mara never wavers. Driven by the understanding that the dragon's survival depends on her leadership, that the human colony's morale hinges on this fight, and that a single misstep could result in total annihilation, the Emperor, witnessing humans sacrificing themselves with reckless brilliance, begins to understand that they are not like other species he has ruled. They do not submit. They do not fear death in the same way, and when cornered, they become unpredictable, adaptive, and terrifyingly relentless, making them a threat that brute power cannot easily suppress. As the battle continues, Mara issues her final commands, coordinating an unprecedented human offensive that uses every resource available. Ships directly collide with enemy, cruisers to disable engines, orbital satellites fire with extreme precision, and dragons swoop in to destroy key targets, their energy and fire devastating the remaining Imperial forces. The Emperor's flagship is hit repeatedly, systems failing, shields collapsing, and for the first time in his long reign, he feels the sting of vulnerability. Knowing that his power is not absolute when humans and dragons fight together with courage and cunning. The final moments of combat are a blur of light, fire, and sound. Human ships explode as they ram Imperial cruisers. Dragons unleash torrents of destructive energy, and Mara directs each movement with unyielding focus, sacrificing her own safety to ensure that the attack succeeds and that the Empire's grip is broken forever. When the dust clears, the Imperial fleet is shattered, retreating in disarray, many ships destroyed or stranded, and the Emperor's throne ship barely escapes, damaged and humbled, while the dragons, now fully awakened, kneel not to a ruler of their kind, but to the human woman who saved them, protected them, and led the alliance that defeated the Empire. This act sends a clear message across the galaxy. Humans are not dominant because they are the strongest or the oldest species, but because they endure, they protect what matters, and they fight with courage, intelligence, and determination that no other race can anticipate. Mara stands in the frozen valley, exhausted and bleeding, surrounded by dragons and the remnants of her human allies, knowing the cost was high, yet proud that her people survived and that the dragons are free from tyranny. realizing that the bond between humans and these ancient creatures has changed the balance of power forever. The story concludes with a lasting image of resilience and hope. The frozen valley, once quiet and isolated, now holds the mark of heroism, where a simple human door stood against an empire and won, proving that even in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity's ingenuity, bravery, and refusal to surrender can topple empires, awaken ancient powers, and inspire legends that will echo across stars for generations, leaving an enduring testament that humans, though seemingly fragile, are capable of shaping the destiny of the galaxy through courage, sacrifice, and unwavering determination.